Guidlmaster Dan.
And I'm GuildMaus.
And welcome to the Flipside, where we discuss the game master and player perspective of different role-playing topics. This week, we're discussing
puzzles
and riddles. Yeah, that was a good intro. See, I can just skip over that whole middle thing there. So, a lot of people don't like puzzles, and a lot of people do like puzzles.
A lot of people hate riddles. And some people do like riddles.
Yeah. The whole thing with them is it's one of those topics that tends to completely polarize players, because you either love them or you hate them. You very rarely find a player or a game master that doesn't have strong feelings about it. On the game master side of things, puzzles functionally are just combination locks. They're fancy combination locks. Because typically, what do you get when you open a puzzle? You get some type of reward, whether that reward is opening a door, revealing some secret, or a cookie, a treasure.
I mean a literal cookie. Just cookie.
Well, if a cookie drops down on a string for you, I would never trust that cookie. Not if I was a player. Anyway, so they're fancy combination locks. They are combination locks that are there essentially to test your knowledge. I mean, it functionally is no different than a group coming up to a door that they cannot open because it's locked. So they have to have the, thief come up and jimmy the lock so that they can get through. So functionally, it's no different. Where it does come into it is sometimes, players will come across a puzzle that even if you have clues there that they just aren't getting, like they're just not coming up with that thought, and you hit that point where the group is sitting there and thinking about it, where gameplay essentially stops so that they can play this different game that you've inserted into. It's like a mini game that you've inserted it into your game. So they have to stop, move aside to do this. Now, puzzles, for me, I view puzzles as being, they can be fun, but they're not fun when a group is just hitting a brick wall. And that's not fun for you as a game master, because you can see them get frustrated and whatnot, and sometimes you'll get them want to, just try and skip it through a roll or whatnot, which you can do if it gets bad enough. You can let them beat it with a roll, but the only problem with that is it doesn't feel satisfying for you. It kind of defeats the entire purpose, and it doesn't feel satisfying for them because they feel like they were too dumb to solve it in the first place, or, they just got frustrated.
Honestly, DMs, I think one of the worst things that you could ever do to a player is limit their knowledgeability by their character stats, because that's something that I've seen very often is, your character has below average intelligence, so there's no way you can figure out this riddle. In my experience, it's the person who really can't or shouldn't be able to figure out the riddle that does. The simplest answer has a tendency to be the correct answer. So when you're focusing on something like a character has a 190 IQ and Joe Bob's got like a 97, and Joe Bob...
Yeah, the 190 IQ could be overthinking it.
Right. And
where Joe Bob's like,
it's this.
Solved.
Done. And then that's a huge step in character development. Just letting your characters and their players figure it out.
And then Joe Bob can be like, maybe I'm not so dumb. Well, I'm just saying.
Lords it over the wizard forever.
Yeah. Well, no, that's a legitimate point. I mean, essentially, like I said before, you're putting another game inside of your game, and you're essentially stopping your normal role-playing so that they can solve this puzzle. And typically you let them discuss that, and preferably they want to role-play that out, but essentially people who are below average intelligence are not precluded from solving puzzles. I mean, we deal with puzzles all the time. If you ever bought a kid a Transformer toy, that's a puzzle. That's not just a toy. That's literally what those are. They're puzzle toys. A jigsaw puzzle is a puzzle. So puzzles are not precluded from people who of lower intelligence. So I would agree. Players should not be... You should never, as a GM, say, everybody gets to solve this puzzle except for you two. You just go sit in the corner and do whatever dumb role play you do. Because that's really lame.
Now, as far as Guildmaster Dan earlier was talking about there are players and DMs who don't like puzzles or riddles.
Yeah.
Just because one person doesn't like riddles, just because one player doesn't like riddles or puzzles, don't deny the other players the opportunity. Everybody has personal preferences. Some people like dill pickles, I like sweet pickles. The blueberry doesn't, but that's besides the point. If you deny everybody at the table sweet pickles because one person detests them, that's like the meanest thing you could do.
Well, I think ultimately the point I think here is you need to know your group. If all of your group doesn't like puzzles, then there's no reason for you to be putting puzzles in your game just because you like puzzles. They're not going to have fun, and you're not going to have fun because they're not enjoying the puzzles you're putting there. They're just going to get frustrated and angry at the puzzle and, through extension, you. Which
requires communication after game and after everybody's had a chance to process it later.
Well, preferably beforehand. You want to find out what people enjoy in game. Role-playing, combat, puzzles. Puzzles is typically like a third one that's always in there because not everybody likes it, but those who do like it tend to like it a lot because they find it more stimulating than like, oh, this door has a lock that I can get through with a roll. Some people like puzzles. Like I said, this is always a very polarizing topic because some people really like puzzles. Yeah.
It's very touchy.
And I think ultimately it just comes down to knowing your group. And
the best way to know your group is to either talk to them or talk to them and still do a trial and error. Like, test them out. Give them smaller puzzles in the beginning. I remember we had a campaign with Guildmaster Dan where it involved clocks. You had to turn like something a specific way.
That wasn't one of my puzzles.
Whose was that?
I have no idea who you're talking about.
No, that was totally you.
I didn't have a clock puzzle.
It was like a clock puzzle.
I had a...
You were hyper-focused on the word clock.
Well, you said clock. That's literally what... You said it was a clock puzzle.
You had to, turn a bunch of stuff a specific way to open a door.
I had a perspective puzzle once.
Is that what I'm thinking
That
of?
I wholesale lifted out of the video game Fez.
I love the game Fez. Fez is a great game. I got motion sick.
Anyway, but that's a perfect example of when you put puzzles in a game, even though it could be completely simple to you, and you put clues in there for it, your players might not get it. It could be the simplest puzzle in the world, or that you think is the simplest puzzle in the world, that is like, there's really only one trick to it and the rest, and it just falls into place, and they just don't get it. If you're going to have puzzles, number one, you need to be really good at giving players clues. And I don't mean like just saying, well, if you do this, something happens. No, you need to be good at giving them in-game clues as to the solution. Whether that's like writing on the wall, picture clues to it, or even the starting setup itself could be a clue. Guildmasters recently ran a game where she had magic doors that gave riddles. And actually, there would be a person that appeared in the mirror on the door to give the riddle. The person themselves was a clue to what the riddle, or to what the answer to the riddle was. You have to figure out in-game clues for it, because if you reduce it to, make a roll and I'll give you a clue, oh, well, if you do this, then something happens. Well, that is completely defeating the purpose in the first place.
Admittedly, the dentist was a little bit difficult for you guys.
That's because dentists don't exist.
Yes, they do.
Not in the same way.
They're barber surgeons, technically, but...
Anyway, point being...
Warhammer Fantasy.
Anyway, you have to be good at giving clues in-game. If you end up reducing it to just a roll, no one's going to be satisfied, and you're going to feel like there's no point in having it there in the first place.
And that's really relying too heavily on the mechanics, which can be jarring to role-play-heavy or even combat-heavy campaigns. Focusing so hard on rolls to get things accomplished really takes you out of the setting, because now you're staring at your piece of paper going, well, I've got all these bonuses and these numbers, and that's not... I'm one of those players where I just don't enjoy that.
I've heard that argument. I have all these bonuses to things. Which one of them can I use to solve this puzzle?
None of them. Use your brain.
Well, yeah, and ultimately that's what it comes down to, is you're trying to challenge the player's brain here. Now, in the most ideal scenario where they're role-playing it out, it's actually you're challenging the character's brain, where the player might figure it out, but the character doesn't. Situations like that are fine, which also, that's another thing that she brought up about how, some players might not like it, and some characters might not...
like puzzles.
Yeah, they might not be able to be... You might have a character that's not necessarily good at puzzles, and role-playing out that, they go off and sit in a corner because they don't want... They accept they don't want to do it.
Normally, that's a player that doesn't enjoy puzzles themselves. Like, they'll participate in the background out of game, but they won't necessarily participate in game, so...
Well, not necessarily. I mean, like, if I'm playing a fight... Like, it's one thing if you're playing a fighter who is dumb and...
below average intelligence.
It is one thing if you're playing a fighter and he is below average intelligence and, and you choose to, like, you can't participate in this because your character is dumb. Well, that's not fair. Yeah, that's not fair. But it's quite another thing if that below average intelligence fighter comes up and says,
this is too hard, I don't want to do it. And then they go sit in the corner.
Well, yeah, because that's in character. That's a character who's like, no, I don't know how to do this, and steps out of the way so the smarter characters can do it. That's perfectly fine. But you never want to exclude players from doing it because of their stats.
DMs, there's something that I would encourage you as a player to do, especially for puzzles and riddles, is have a secondary route.
That's actually that's one of the kind of workarounds to puzzles that a lot of people suggest, is that, make puzzles optional in the first place. Never use them for, you cannot advance if you don't figure out this puzzle. Mainly because that brings all of the issues that are surrounding puzzles to the head. Because even if you have a group that are really smart players and they actually like puzzles, they might not get the clues that you give them, and they might be bashing their heads against the wall, not able to figure it out.
That could be your secondary route.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Bashing their head literally against the wall could be your secondary route.
Well, the point is, it's not a bad idea, but here's the other thing for players out there, from a Game Master perspective. Just because you come up to a wall... Remember, I said that puzzles are fancy combination locks. Sorry, we have a dog and a cat in the room with us. Puzzles are just fancy combination locks, players. And just like if you came upon any locked door, unlocking that door with your thief is not the only way to get through that door.
Are the hinges on our side?
Or even just, taking an axe to the wooden door.
If it's a wooden door.
Well, yeah. Well, that's my point. If you come up to an obstacle that you can't solve through the normal means, think around it. That's the entire point of it.
If it's a metal door and you have a vial of acid, it should work just fine.
So if you come... Alright, so, like, here's, for an example, you come up to a physical puzzle where you, gotta move blocks around in order to trigger switches, or the right switches to open the door, right? Okay, you guys can't figure out how to arrange the blocks. Here's an idea. Look at the mechanisms themselves and see if you can just trigger the mechanisms without using the blocks. Or, it unlocks a door. See if you can just, say, take the door off its hinges, or force the door up.
Or if somebody has a halfling, throw the halfling in the air to see if maybe you can figure out the puzzle from above. Or if a wizard has a levitate spell.
Well, yeah, the point is...
Or Tender's floating disc.
The point is, Game Masters, be aware of what puzzles can do to players. Even the smartest of players might not get it, or they might get it like that, and it feels kind of eh. Be sure your group likes puzzles, and be sure to measure what types of puzzles based on the group. Always be good at giving clues, and players, don't forget that you can work around these things that you come across. Just because you find a puzzle and you're not sure how to solve it, doesn't mean you can't get past it and give a big middle finger to whatever in-world NPC put it there in the first place.
Something that I really like about puzzles and riddles is when they're not specifically directed at one person. When you have the opportunity to teamwork a puzzle, even if it's everybody gets a single guess towards the answer. That could get a little tedious with a group of 14, but hey, you've got 14 guesses.
That's true. That is true. You definitely, like, if you only have one person who likes puzzles, keep puzzles minimum. In that case, you probably would want them to be optional, because it's, it's a chance to give one player a chance to shine.
But a puzzle is an opportunity for collaborative work within the group. So you're team building, and when you're intending on playing a long-term game, longer than a one-shot, or, shorter than a year, or even longer than a year, you want to build your teamwork so that your players can get to the stage where, like a good military unit, you don't have to say anything to anybody, or, hand signals, or everybody knows what they're supposed to do. Giving your group the opportunity to bond over the trials and tribulations of puzzles and riddles is a great team-building skill.
Well, yeah. I honestly, when you do team-building, like, workshops and stuff, one of the first things they do is they give you puzzles to solve. Now, just like in real life, though, I typically find that in games, physical puzzles work better than, like, math puzzles or even riddles. So riddles can be fun and team-building, too, because you have to sit there and discuss amongst each other the best answer.
Time limits don't help riddles or puzzles like that.
No, but stakes can help. Like, if you have to put something on the line per guess, that works. Like, I once ran through a dungeon where each puzzle, you had to wager, they were called units. It was like a gnomish entertainment facility, but you had to measure units, or wager units. And what units were was actually like thousands of experience points. So you get to you quickly figure out that, oh, if I fail at doing this, it's very bad, so I want to make sure to do it right. Having stakes to a puzzle is fine, but like you said, don't do it the other way.
What?
What you said.
I've said a lot of things.
All right, anyway. So,
don't focus it on one person specifically. Leave it as a collaborative.
No, it's something after that. But all right, it's okay. All right. So, okay, I think we can do like a final word thing here. Ultimately, I say, like, for game masters, puzzles can be very rewarding for players because when they solve them, if they solve them and it's a challenge, just like any other challenge, they're going to feel like they really accomplished something. But ultimately, you need to know your group. If your group does not like puzzles, don't bother putting them in there because they're not going to enjoy it in the first place. It's just going to frustrate everyone. But if they do like puzzles, be good at giving clues and stick to physical puzzles, because physical puzzles are easier to imagine. Otherwise, puzzles can be rewarding. Just know your group. That's the most important thing, is know your group and be good at giving clues.
Mine's for DMs and players. Don't deny yourselves the opportunity to try. Give it a go. Even if in total no one likes puzzles, try it anyways, because it's character development, and your whole point of playing, aside from fun and awesomeness, is to develop a well-balanced, well-rounded character. And when denying them the experience of doing puzzle work or riddle work, or fighting in a barren wasteland against a purple worm, potential spoilers, you're just losing out on an experience. And I'm not talking about the level boosting kind. I'm talking about the experience that you can only have through doing things and going through situations. If you want your players and, to have that happy feeling on the inside, that sparkly happy feeling that we all get when, we finally open that can without a can opener, just give it a go.
Yeah.
Don't deny yourselves.
I would tack on the end of there, don't be discouraged if you come across a puzzle that you can't solve.
Remember, the door always has hinges. Unless there is a mirror shield protective on said door, you can always throw some acid on there. Fireball is a fantastic way to open a door as long as everybody's out of splash range. There's always a way around. Throw the halfling in a spiked armor. Like, there's always a way around it.
there's always a way around an obstacle that may not be the most obvious.
A grenade!
Like, that in itself is a puzzle. The fact that you come across a puzzle you can't solve, the way that you work around it is a puzzle that you were solving. There's a thought. Whenever you get around a door you can't get past, you are solving a puzzle. So, yeah. Think around it, and
If you
GMs...
can't get past the door, make a door.
Yeah, pretty much. And GMs, let them do that. Absolutely. If they can't solve your puzzle and they come up with a more clever way to get around it, do not force them to go back to that puzzle.
And don't
because
punish them for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just because you worked hard on a puzzle, if they actually come up with something clever to get around it, encourage that. Don't discourage it, because you're just forcing them to butt their heads against a wall.
Like the druid transmorgifying into a snake and then compressing themselves underneath the doorway to open it on the other side. That's brilliant! I would just be like, holla, son!
Legit. But, alright, so that's the gist. Thank you guys for, puzzles. They can be great. Just know your group so you know if they would enjoy it or not.
Don't deny yourself the opportunity of experience.
Yes. And thank you guys for coming and watching another Flipside. Don't know when the next one will be, but I'm sure it'll be just as amusing as it was this time. So thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next time.
Philosopher!